I want to go back. He wants to go back. I want to go back to the farm. Go back far away from home, with a milk pail on my arm. I miss the rooster, the one that used to wake me up at 4 a.m. down on the farm.
I'm Scott Boehm. They call me the old farmer. Back in my 20s, a couple of times I had used a router. I never had a project. My dad had gotten one back in the 70s or so, and so I tried it out and I used it a couple of times on a couple of pieces of scrap wood. I never really had the chance to get into using a router. So when he passed away, I got his Craftsman router, and then I would say probably a couple of months ago, I stopped off at Habitat for Humanity and found the identical one and picked it up for, I think, about $25. So I got two identical hand routers. Both work well. The project that I want to do is I want to have a pot hanging rack on a particular wall. And also at Habitat for Humanity, I found some doors and such that I could take the framing and glue it together and make the backing for it. I'm showing roughly how the thing will go together. Then it'll be hung on the wall, and then hooks will hang the pots and pans on it. That's a piece of cherry. Both pieces were cherry. Now, one of the ones I had trouble with, and I had to use a different piece of wood to finish it off, and I believe it was maple that I used. And I shellacked it down a couple of coats, and they look pretty close to one another. But right now you can kind of see the concept. There'll be hooks that go on it, and then pots will be hung on it. So I really haven't used a router much at all, and so I'm trying it out on a test piece to see if the piece is working correctly. I think the only time I did a project before that is that I did a step stool, and I routed the steps. And so I want to get better experience with it, learn how to do it right, because I really don't like the trim in the house, and I'd like to be able to make the molding for it myself. So it takes experience to do that, especially with large volumes, long length. And so I thought I'd put a little bit of detail into this piece of wood. I thought the pieces were straight after I had cut them and everything, and they weren't. So I glued them together, ran it on a table saw, and had the kerf go and catch both sides of the glue joint, and then I re-glued it together, and it did a pretty good job. Like using a joiner, and then I re-glued it and got the finished piece. I'm having a little bit of a problem because the clamps were in the way and I couldn't exactly go across all the way. So I'll finish that piece up a little bit later on. Now this is the one that I had trouble with, because they had those circular holes for cabinet doors, the hinges, make it without getting in the way of those. But I couldn't, and part of it's my inexperience with the router, and I ran into a problem with it, so I had to switch. But this is the end product of what I got, and you can see how it puts a little bit more detail into it. Should have dusted it before I shot some video on it. You can also see the trim there, a little bit of the trim that on that one door there that needs to go, and I want to redo things. So that's the finished product. Got two different size rails, and we hung our pots and pans on it.
Oh yeah.
Yep, that's right, folks. It is what you think it is. A Grizzly G1035 shaper. Now, I look at routing tables where you put your router up underneath and you do things with it, and to get a halfway decent one is about the same price as what this Grizzly shaper is. And a shaper is nothing more than a heavy-duty router table. With the exception, most router tables will either handle quarter or half-inch shafts. With the adapter that I got with this thing, I can do quarter, half-inch, and 3/4-inch shafts on it, which gives me a much better flexibility of what I can use for creating different things. But in addition to doing the router bits, it also has a cutter piece that you strap cutters to the spindle, and I can go 2¼ inch tall, so a 2¼ inch piece of wood, and it's just more capability for the same price. So between getting a routing table and getting a shaper, that's a no-brainer. You get a shaper. Now, I didn't go through and video the assembly of it, but it wasn't too bad. There were a couple of major things that occurred. While removing the shipping bars that hold the motor in place, one of the nuts went down inside the motor because the cooling fan had a shroud around it, and of course when I took the nut off, it went right down inside, and it took me about a half hour to get it back out. And this is what the little puppy looks like. Quite impressive, isn't it? And I could have gotten the extension tables, the stuff that I do need, I want to build myself. From using it just a little bit, I've just a couple of little pieces here. I went through and figured out that when you're doing some routing, you leave the fence in place and you raise and lower the bit. That would be the easier way of doing it. And of course, it's got the hold down pieces there to hold it in place, the wood. A lot of safety built into it, because if you do it wrong, it's not a safe machine if you don't play by the rules. This is the piece that the dust hood, and if I remember right, when I bought the shaper, I think they wanted $70 for it, and I can build that myself out of plexiglass and PVC. Now this is my daddy's router right here. It's heavy enough that if you hold on to it tight, it's not going to get away from you. I just thought I'd show you what I'm getting into. So this is the old farmer, Scott Bame, saying, "Be well."
If YouTube wants me to be the poster boy for the pre-apocalyptic toilet paper tablet fad, then why not? Why not milk it, right? Thanks for watching, guys. Canadian Prepper out.
Down on the farm.